Welcome to Unhurried Minds, a quiet place for gentle stories, slow reflections, and unhurried thoughts. Each time you join me here, you are invited to slow down, to breathe a little easier, and to let the busy world soften at the edges. So settle into a comfortable position. Let your shoulders ease downward. Let your breath fall into a soft, natural rhythm. You don't need to do anything or think about anything. Just arrive gently. Tonight's story will unfold slowly with calm pacing and plenty of room to drift. If sleep comes to meet you along the way, you are welcome to follow it. Take a slow breath here, and let's begin. Tonight we'll wander through the long and layered story of modern Christmas, a holiday shaped by ancient fires, winter gatherings, folklore, generosity, faith, and human longing. We won't rush. Instead, we'll move slowly across centuries, pausing to notice how different cultures carried warmth and light through the coldest season of the year. The story of Christmas is not one story, but many stories gently woven together. Some threads are thousands of years old, others are recent additions. Together, they create a tapestry that is familiar to us today in the soft glow of winter lights. Allow yourself a moment of stillness and let the journey begin. Chapter 1. The Oldest Winter Lights. Long before the word Christmas existed, winter shaped human life. In the northern world, the sun slipped away early each afternoon. The long stretch of darkness could feel endless. Nights were cold, quiet, and very still, and people, whether in small villages or larger ancient cities, longed for warmth, community, and reassurance. Imagine winter thousands of years ago, the air crisp and sharp, snow settling softly on rooftops, stars bright above a silent landscape, the world at rest, as though nature were holding its breath. Take a slow breath here. In this dark season, many ancient cultures created festivals, not just for joy, but for survival of the spirit. In ancient Rome, there was Saturnalia. It was a celebration of joy, feasting, and reversal, a brief period when the usual social rules loosened. People exchanged small gifts, candles, dolls, tokens of good fortune. Homes were decorated with evergreen branches, their deep green a reminder that life persisted. Even in winter's cold silence, evergreens were ancient symbols of endurance. They remained green when all other plants faded. To bring them indoors was to carry a piece of life into the heart of winter. Imagine the scent of pine drifting through a warm room, the branches draped over doorways, the soft flicker of oil lamps reflecting in their needles. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. Farther north, the Yule festival brought its own magic. In cold northern Europe, families gathered around massive Yule logs that burned for hours, sometimes days. The flames rose and crackled, casting golden light across wooden walls and sending small sparks drifting upward, like tiny stars lifting into the night. Children would sit close to the hearth, their faces warmed by the fire, listening to elders tell stories of spirits, ancestors, and the return of the sun. In the dark, quiet outside, forests of ancient fir and spruce trees stood steady, their branches heavy with snow, the world around them crisp and silent. Inside the home, firelight danced, stories echoed, and families felt safe. Take a slow breath here. The Yule log was more than a source of heat. It was a symbol of continuity The fire represented protection, a barrier against the cold and the unknown. Its steady glow told a quiet story that even in the longest nights, light had a place. Light would return. Around the fire, people shared food, songs, laughter, and a sense of belonging. These moments, these winter gatherings, were the emotional beginnings of what would someday become Christmas. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. Across different cultures, winter festivals shared a few common ideas: light in darkness, warmth amid cold, community during hardship, hope in the quiet depths of winter. These weren't just rituals, they were reminders that even in harsh seasons, seasons when daylight faded and resources were scarce, human beings could find ways to bring comfort to one another. Picture a small village long ago, a cluster of simple homes, their windows glowing softly from within, smoke rising from chimneys, footsteps crunching in the snow, as families make their way to the home of a neighbor to share food and stories. The celebration might have lasted hours or days. It was a way to make winter not just bearable, but meaningful. Take a slow breath here. There were other ancient festivals too. The Persian festival of Yalda marked the longest night, celebrating the victory of light over darkness. Fruits like pomegranates symbolized the sun's rebirth. Families stayed awake together to welcome the returning light. In Norse traditions, animals were carved into wood and placed near entrances to watch over households through the winter. Meals were shared as acts of gratitude and devotion to community. In Celtic lands, mistletoe was considered sacred, a plant that grew even without roots in the earth, symbolizing mystery, resilience, and healing. Its presence in winter rituals would one day touch Christmas traditions, though no one then could have imagined it. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. When we look closely, these early festivals weren't about extravagance. They were about reassurance. They told people, "You are not alone. We will face the darkness together. The light will return." Human beings have always needed these reminders. During the coldest and darkest times, we look for warmth in each other's presence. Take another slow breath here, letting the air settle gently within you. As centuries passed, the world changed, but the patterns of winter tradition remained. People continued to gather to decorate with evergreen branches, to share food, to honor the turning of the seasons. And eventually, as new beliefs and cultures began to grow, these ancient winter rituals would merge with another story. A story that would give winter celebration an entirely new meaning. Allow yourself a moment of stillness as we prepare to enter the next chapter of our journey. Chapter 2. The Birth of a New Story. Allow yourself a moment of stillness and imagine the world around 2,000 years ago. The Roman Empire stretched across vast lands, from North Africa to Britain, from Spain to the Middle East. It was an interconnected world full of movement, trade, stories, and traditions. People traveled, ideas traveled, and beliefs blended. Amid this world, a small and quiet story emerged. A story that began in a humble place, with a birth that at first few people noticed. But over centuries, this story would grow into the heart of what we now call Christmas. Take a slow breath here. The earliest followers of Jesus did not celebrate his birth. For them, the most meaningful events were his teachings, his compassion, and eventually his death and resurrection. Birthdays were not commonly celebrated in many Jewish or early Christian communities. Instead, holy days focused on remembrance, prayer, and acts of service. For the first few hundred years, there was no holiday called Christmas, no feast, no decorated homes, no date on the calendar connected to his birth. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. But as Christianity began to grow across the Roman Empire, leaders and communities started to look for ways to express joy, unity, and spiritual meaning. By the 4th century, something began to shift. The Roman world had long celebrated the return of the sun around the winter solstice. For centuries, people honored the moment when the days would grow longer, the light would slowly return, and the dark would loosen its grip. It was during this time of year that Christian leaders chose to celebrate the birth of Jesus, the one they called the light of the world. No one knew the exact date of his birth, but the symbolism of placing the celebration in midwinter was powerful, poetic, and deeply meaningful to communities already accustomed to viewing the solstice as a moment of renewal. Take a slow breath here. The earliest known record of December 25th as the official celebration comes from the year 336 during the reign of Emperor Constantine. This was the first Christmas recognized throughout parts of the Roman Empire. Imagine the world then. Stone cities with narrow streets, homes warmed by small hearth fires, and quiet gatherings of early Christians who lit candles not for decoration, but for prayer, for reverence, and for the symbol of divine light. These first celebrations were simple and solemn, nothing like the familiar Christmas traditions we now know. There were no trees, no stockings, no wrapped gifts or jolly figures in red. Instead, early Christmas was shaped by reflection, scripture, and the hope for peace. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. As Christianity spread farther north, to lands where Yule fires burned and winter festivals thrived, cultures began to intertwine. People did not simply abandon their old traditions. Instead, traditions blended, softened, and reshaped themselves across generations. In Northern Europe, Yule celebrations slowly merged with Christmas stories. Evergreen branches, symbols of endurance, found their way into Christian homes. Candles that once represented the sun's return now carried layers of new meaning. Feasts that once honored midwinter became Christmas feasts. The winter season remained a time of togetherness, but the reasons for gathering deepened as beliefs overlapped and evolved. Take another slow breath here. In medieval Europe, Christmas grew into a season, lasting not one day but 12. A long stretch of celebration, reflection, feasting, and spiritual observance. During these centuries, nativity plays became popular. People reenacted the story of the humble birth in villages, churches, and town squares. These performances brought communities together in a shared experience of wonder, storytelling, and reverence. Caroling, once called wassailing, also began to flourish. Groups wandered from home to home, sharing songs and receiving small gifts of food or drink in return. This tradition held echoes of ancient communal gatherings where neighbors supported one another through the long winter months. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. As Christmas spread across Europe, it began to take on different colors, flavors, and customs, depending on the region. In Italy, nativity scenes called presepi became central to the holiday. Artists carved intricate figures of Mary, Joseph, and the newborn Jesus, placing them in humble wooden stables. That echoed the simplicity of the biblical story. In France, families gathered around feasts that stretched long into the night, filled with laughter and candlelight. In Germany, Christmas markets began to emerge. Bustling gatherings where merchants sold winter treats, handcrafted toys, and warm spiced drinks. Visitors walked between stalls lined with lanterns, their breath curling into the cold night air. Take a slow breath here. Germany would later shape some of the most iconic symbols of Christmas tradition, but we'll come to that soon. For now, picture the medieval world. Small towns lit by torchlight, church bells ringing in crisp winter air, and families gathering inside warm homes to share stories by the hearth. In these moments, Christmas became not just a religious celebration, but a cultural one, a time that blended faith, tradition, community, and the enduring human need for warmth. In the cold season, allow yourself a moment of stillness. It's important to remember that Christmas during these centuries was not always peaceful or calm. At times it grew rowdy, filled with boisterous celebrations, public feasts, and even mischief. Some villages designated a lord of misrule, a chosen figure who led playful chaos and temporary role reversal. It was a time when ordinary rules loosened, much like Saturnalia, the ancient Roman festival that influenced it. But beneath both the solemn and the spirited celebrations, the core meaning of winter gatherings remained unchanged. People needed connection. People needed hope. People needed reminders that darkness would not last forever. Take a slow breath here. As Christianity expanded globally to Africa, Asia, and the Americas, Christmas continued to grow, shift, and absorb local cultures and customs. In Ethiopia, Christmas, called Ghana, became a day of white clothing, prayer, and gentle celebration. In Mexico, the tradition of Las Posadas developed into beautiful candlelit processions, reenacting Mary and Joseph's search for shelter. In the Philippines, Christmas blossomed into one of the longest celebrations in the world, stretching across months, and glowing with lanterns called parol, symbolizing the star that guided the wise men. Each tradition carried the same heartbeat, a desire to create light in the darkest part of the year. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. By now, Christmas had grown beyond its origins. It was both a spiritual remembrance and a cultural season of warmth. But something was still missing, something that modern Christmas would eventually embrace fully: a sense of home, a sense of kindness, a sense of giving. These qualities were always there, in small, quiet ways, but they had yet to take center stage. That shift would arrive, but not until new voices and new stories emerged in later centuries. Take a slow breath here, and when you're ready, we'll continue our journey into the next era of Christmas. Chapter 3: A Season Reinvented. Allow yourself a moment of stillness as we shift into a new era of Christmas, a time when old traditions faded, new customs emerged, and the holiday began to resemble the one we know today. Take a slow breath here. By the 1600s, Christmas in parts of Europe had become a mixture of solemn worship, lively celebrations, theater, feasts, and sometimes mischief. Some leaders felt the holiday had grown too noisy, too chaotic, too far from its spiritual center. In 1647, during the Puritan rule in England, Christmas was actually banned. Shops remained open on December 25th. Churches were silent. Gatherings were discouraged. Authorities believed the holiday had become unruly and needed to be restrained. Imagine the streets on a winter morning, quiet, still, with no sounds of celebration. A stark contrast to the centuries of feasting and music that had once filled the season. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. Despite the ban, many people continue to celebrate quietly at home, lighting small candles, sharing simple meals, and holding close to the traditions they cherished. When the ban eventually lifted, Christmas returned. But something had shifted. The holiday was ready for transformation. Take another slow breath here. During the 18th and early 19th centuries, Christmas began to drift toward a more intimate, home-centered celebration. In Germany, a land of forests, mountains, and quiet winter villages, one of the most iconic symbols of Christmas took root: the Christmas tree. Evergreens had been used for thousands of years as symbols of endurance, but the tradition of decorating a whole tree indoors gained momentum in German-speaking regions during the 1500s and 1600s. At first, the decorations were simple: apples, nuts, candles, and hand-carved wooden figures. Families gathered around the tree, singing songs and sharing stories by its gentle glow. Visualize the scene, a warm room filled with candlelight, a tall evergreen shimmering softly, and quiet voices singing together. As snow settled outside the window, take a slow breath here. This German tradition would eventually spread far beyond its borders, thanks in part to a young Queen Victoria and her husband, Prince Albert, who popularized the Christmas tree. Throughout England in the 1800s, a single illustration of the royal family, gathered around a decorated tree, captured the imagination of the public, and within a few years, Christmas trees became a beloved tradition across Britain and soon after, North America. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. Meanwhile, in the early United States, Christmas was evolving in its own way. The colonies had mixed attitudes toward the holiday. Some embraced it, others rejected it as frivolous. But by the 1800s, something remarkable happened. Artists, writers, and poets began to reimagine Christmas as a season of warmth, generosity, and childhood wonder. One of the most influential voices was Washington Irving, who wrote gentle stories about families gathering by the fire, sharing meals, and treating one another with kindness. His tales were nostalgic and comforting, painting Christmas not as chaos, but as a peaceful, heartwarming celebration. Take a slow breath here. Then came a poem that would transform the imagination of millions. In 1823, A Visit from St. Nicholas appeared anonymously in a New York newspaper. You likely know it by its opening line: "'Twas the night before Christmas." This single poem reshaped the modern image of St. Nicholas, not as a solemn bishop or a mysterious gift-bringer, but as a joyful, kind figure. With a sleigh, reindeer, and a spirit of giving, he became smaller and friendlier, dressed in fur-lined clothes, with eyes that sparkled and laughter that warmed the room. Children adored him. Parents embraced the magic he represented. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. As this new Santa Claus grew in popularity, artists began to illustrate him round-cheeked, red-robed, and full of cheer. By the late 1800s, his image had spread across the Western world, cementing the character. Who would become central to modern Christmas traditions? Take a slow breath here. Gift-giving also began to evolve during this time. For centuries, small tokens had been exchanged. During winter festivals, candles, fruit, bread, modest offerings of kindness. But in the 1800s, as industry grew and goods became more accessible, the custom of giving thoughtful presents became more common. Not extravagant gifts, but personal ones. Books, handmade toys, woven scarves, simple items wrapped with care. Families created traditions of gathering on Christmas morning to exchange gifts as gestures of affection and gratitude. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. Another tradition unfolded during this era. Caroling became a cherished part of the season. Victorian families and choirs sang songs that blended old melodies with new lyrics celebrating peace, joy, and togetherness. Imagine stepping outside on a snowy evening to the sound of soft voices singing, "Silent night, or O come, all ye faithful," their harmonies drifting gently through the winter air. Take a slow breath here. The 1800s also brought the first Christmas cards, small pieces of printed art, sent to friends and family to share warm wishes. The very first commercial Christmas card was printed in 1843 in London. It featured a simple scene of family togetherness and the message, "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you." The idea was embraced quickly, and soon millions of cards traveled across continents, bearing sentiments of hope, friendship, and goodwill. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. By the end of the 19th century, Christmas had transformed into a season centered on home, family, kindness, and quiet joy. It was no longer a wild festival of misrule, nor solely a solemn religious observance. It had become something gentler, a holiday of warmth in the coldest part of the year. And yet, it would continue to evolve, especially as the world entered the 20th century. Take one more slow breath here. In the centuries to come, new traditions would emerge: twinkling electric lights, modern Christmas music, holiday films, charitable giving campaigns, and global celebrations that reflected both old customs and new expressions of joy. But before we step into the modern world, let's pause quietly and appreciate how far the story has come. From ancient fires to evergreen branches, from solstice festivals to humble nativity scenes, from candlelit trees to jolly gift-bringers, from solemn gatherings to heartfelt generosity. The story of Christmas is the story of how humanity carries light through winter, generation after generation. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. And when you're ready, we'll continue into the final chapter of our journey. Chapter 4. The Modern Christmas. Take a slow breath here as we step gently into the world of the 20th century, a century of invention, change, and the blossoming of many traditions we now see as timeless. By the early 1900s, Christmas had already taken on its familiar form. Evergreen trees, family gatherings, carols, gift-giving, and the warm glow of candlelight. But soon, new innovations would transform the season. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. In 1882, the very first electric Christmas tree lights were created by Edward Johnson, a colleague of Thomas Edison. He decorated a tree in New York City with 80 small colored bulbs, a dazzling modern alternative to candles. At first, the idea seemed unusual, even extravagant. But slowly, the soft, colorful sparkle of electric lights captured the world's imagination. By the mid-20th century, twinkling lights filled living rooms, windows, and entire neighborhoods. Dark winter streets glowed with color, an echo of the ancient desire to bring light into the longest nights. Take a slow breath here. The early 20th century also saw a blossoming of Christmas music. Songs like Silent Night and Oh, Holy Night had long been beloved, but now new melodies began to emerge. Songs filled with warmth, nostalgia, and gentle winter imagery. In the 1930s and 40s, radio stations filled homes with Christmas broadcasts. Families gathered close to the warm hum of the radio, joining the crackling of fireplaces as familiar voices sang carols. Then came the Silver Age of Christmas music. Voices like Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole, Ella Fitzgerald, and Frank Sinatra filling the air with songs that wrapped listeners in a soft, comforting glow. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. And then, of course, came the stories. Stories that shaped childhoods, sparked imaginations, and became woven into the holiday season. In 1939, a department store writer created a small booklet about a red-nosed reindeer to give away to children during the holidays. That reindeer's name was Rudolph, and his story would become beloved worldwide, a gentle reminder that uniqueness is something to be cherished. Around the same time, illustrators refined the image of Santa Claus even further. Rounder, cheerier, with a bright red suit and a snowy beard. This image spread through magazines, advertisements, and eventually television solidifying the joyful figure who now embodies the spirit of giving. Take another slow breath here. By the mid-20th century, Christmas films became a treasured part of the season. Movies like It's a Wonderful Life, A Christmas Carol, and Miracle on 34th Street brought to life themes of generosity, compassion, family, and hope. Through the glow of black and white screens, audiences were reminded that kindness can change a life, that hope can be rekindled, and that even the smallest act of generosity can transform a winter night. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. As decades passed, Christmas became a global celebration, shaped by local customs, but connected by universal feelings of warmth and togetherness. In Japan, families embraced the tradition of sharing a special meal to mark the holiday season. In Australia, Christmas falls in summer. Beaches, warm evenings, and gatherings under bright sunlight. In Scandinavia, the quiet glow of candles and lanterns continues to illuminate long winter nights. In Latin America, vibrant festivals and processions fill streets with color and music. Across cultures, Christmas became a season for storytelling, reflection, and the simple joy of being together. Take a slow breath here. Yet even as the holiday grew, its deepest message remained unchanged, a message about light, generosity, and the quiet power of hope. Whether expressed through religious traditions, family rituals, acts of giving, or community celebrations, Christmas offers a gentle reminder that even in dark seasons, light has a place, and that place is often found in the warmth we create for each other. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. As we arrive in the present day, Christmas continues to evolve. Some families gather around trees, sparkling with ornaments collected over generations. Others celebrate with meals, music, or shared traditions unique to their culture. Children wait eagerly for surprises. Adults savor quiet moments of gratitude. Cities glow with lights. Homes fill with scents of pine, cinnamon, and warm winter meals. In all its forms, Christmas remains a season of connection dash. A space carved out in the calendar to pause, reflect, and appreciate the people who walk beside us throughout the year. Now, let us shift gently into a closing visualization dash. A quiet journey of imagery to settle your mind into a peaceful state of rest. Take a slow breath here and imagine the following scene unfolding around you. Imagine you are walking along a quiet winter path just after twilight. Snow drifts softly from the sky, each flake catching a hint of light. As it falls, the world around you is peaceful. Trees wrapped in delicate frost, branches bending slightly under the weight of powdery snow. Your footsteps make a gentle sound, a soft crunch that echoes lightly in the stillness. Ahead of you, a string of warm golden lanterns hangs from wooden posts along the path. Their glow is soft and comforting, casting halos of light onto the snow beneath them. Take a slow breath here. As you walk, the lanterns guide you forward, one by one, each emitting a warm radiance that feels like a welcome invitation to continue. The air is cold but crisp and refreshing. Your breath rises in small clouds that drift gently before fading into the quiet night. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint chime of a small bell carried by the wind, a sound that feels familiar, as though part of a memory you can almost recall. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. Farther along the path, you see a tall, evergreen tree, standing alone in a glade of snow. Soft lights shimmer across its branches, gold, silver, warm white. Not bright, but gentle, like stars caught in its needles. You walk closer, feeling the warmth of the lights, even though they do not melt the snow. This warmth is the warmth of memory, connection, tradition, the feeling of being held by something larger than yourself. Take a slow breath here. At the base of the tree sits a single wooden bench. You take a seat, feeling the smooth grain beneath your fingertips. The tree's lights glow quietly beside you, steady, peaceful, unhurried. You notice that the lights are not all the same. Some feel ancient, like lanterns burning from centuries past. Others feel new, bright, joyful sparks of recent celebrations. All of them together tell a story of how people through time have carried light into winter, sharing warmth with one another through long nights and cold seasons. Allow yourself a moment of stillness. As you rest on the bench, you feel a sense of calm settling gently over you like a soft blanket, woven from centuries of traditions, stories, and simple acts of kindness. The lights shimmer softly. Snow continues to fall in slow, drifting patterns. The world is quiet, peaceful, and full of gentle meaning. Take a slow breath here and let the warmth of this moment settle deep within you. When you are ready, rise slowly from the bench and walk back along the lantern-lit path, each light guiding you steady and calm. With every step, you feel more at ease, more grounded, more connected to your own breath, your own quiet thoughts, your own unhurried mind. Thank you for resting here tonight with Unhurried Minds. Until next time, stay gentle with your thoughts and let your mind remain unhurried.